back to the channel. So today we are going to talk about attachment versus love. So let's start with attachment. The first thing you have to understand about attachment is that every time you get attached to something, it strengthens the story of your ego. Your ego is your identity, and at the very center of your identity is I. I am this, I am that. So many labels. So every time you get attached to a thing, to a person, to a label, becomes part of your story, and in a way it strengthens your sense of identity. So every time you're attached with something externally, it increases your sense of identity. I am my profession, I am my money, I am my relationship. There is no separation, not in a oneness way, not in a merging way, but in a way where you feel you are more because of that. So ego is literally dependent. That's why it clings on to everything. It is very rigid. Because the moment you take away all these things, the ego doesn't know what it is. It has no sense of identity left. Everything on the outside was creating that identity. So if anyone wants to be free from attachment, they have to first understand why the ego attaches itself to things in the first place. And they have to become free in a way from themselves. And the only way you can become free from the ego is by questioning the ego, by becoming aware of the ego, that what is the ego. And that's what I feel real spirituality is all about. Questioning, who am I? Am I just a name that other people gave me? Am I all the belief systems that others imposed on me? If you look really closely, you will see that everything that your story revolves around, majority of it is not something that you even chose. It is something that was imposed on you and you carry it like a baggage. So because at all the center point of the attachment, there is the I. I am this, I am that. When you question the I itself, you realize that you are not limited to the I. There is a higher consciousness in you, there is a higher awareness that is able to watch the I, the ego, which is free from the ego. And it is not that you achieve that higher consciousness. It is simply that you come to the realization that I was already that, but I was identified with something that was not me. So when this awareness comes in your understanding, naturally a byproduct is detachment. You can't force detachment. It should be a byproduct of your understanding of who you really are. Because when you try to force detachment, then again it is the ego getting attached to the idea of detachment. And now I will not get attached to anything. But in doing that, you are attached to the very principle, the notion of detachment. So it should be a byproduct of your understanding. Are you just the I? Are you limited to your labels? Or are you something deeper? The moment you know that's something which is deeper, there is no effort required. Just the understanding is enough. And there is a beautiful quote that detachment is not that you own nothing. It means nothing owns you. You are free from yourself. As a result, you are free from every story, from everything outside of you that creates the attachment. So we think that it's something external that we are attached to, but in actuality, it's our own ego. And when you understand yourself beyond the ego, all that is left is your higher self, and it doesn't need anything to sustain itself. It's whole, it doesn't lack anything. And when you become free from the ego, that's when you really experience love. Love is not just something that is romantic. Love is a union between you and the entire existence. When your personal identity dissolves, you become one with the entire existence. You don't see yourself separate anymore. Still you exist as a person, still there is an identity. But it's only for the name's sake, for the convenient. But you don't identify yourself as that deeply. You see it as a play and you understand the bigger picture. And then naturally you are able to live more freely. Naturally you are able to live a life free of attachments. And if you don't know this love, you don't know love at all. And this is why people confuse attachment with love. Like in many traditions, like India, that once a child becomes an adult, they have to still live with their parents. Otherwise you don't love your parents. And the society, the parents, they all create a guilt in you that you are doing something wrong by growing your wings and flying on your own. A very raw example will be animals. Any animal, whether it is a wolf, a bird, there comes a time when they leave the baby bird, the baby wolf on their own. Now it's your time to fly. Go out into the wild on your own, or maybe create your own pack. So when the parents hold on to the child, they don't let them fly. Their love, their so-called love, is actually attachment, and it destroys the growth, the evolution of the child. So it is very clear that love is not actually holding back someone, possessing them, and saying that if you always live with us, then only there is love. It's actually setting others free. But we have so many traditions, so many cultures, so many stories that we try to fulfill, not out of awareness, not out of love, but out of obligation. You are afraid what other people will say. You are living in fear, and love is the opposite frequency of fear. And that fear is of losing the identity. You are afraid of getting dissolved into the existence. You want to maintain that separate identity. And only when you know this love, you can live a life of purpose. You can carry out a purpose that is beyond yourself. But if you don't know anything that's beyond you, how can you channel that? And when people don't understand that love is freedom, love is letting go, it's not possession. In relationships, it can reflect that as a codependent relationship. Both people are trying to possess each other. There is no freedom. Both of them are getting suffocated. In your career, it can show up as conditional love, where you have to meet a certain criteria. You have to exhaust yourself so that you can get paid at the end of the month. This is how we have been operating, but it doesn't mean that going forward we have to take part in that energy. We should always focus on unlearning all that is of the past. All these traditions, all these cultures, and all these stories, they were created in the past. Maybe they were convenient at that time, but times change, and with time the consciousness shifts. So if you are trying to operate in the old ways in the present, you will always feel suffocated. You are not being responsible for your own life. You're not flying, you are just in the cage of past conditioning, past culture, and life is always changing. And this is why, from my understanding and perspective, I don't align with anything which is of the past, because they belong to the past. And with time, every teaching, it should transform itself, because the mind is constantly evolving. Your mind is not like it was 1,000 years before or 500 years before. So why are we attached? Because the ego is addicted to the past. Ego feels safe in the past. It feels comfortable there. And what is your identity if we remove your past? If we remove all your experiences from your human mind, of your past, of all the memories, what will you identify yourself with? Who are you then? How will you glorify what you have done in the past? Just look at any senior citizen, any old person, majority of them. They are glorifying their past. Look what I did at that time. I was such a so and so. But what about your present? So they are keeping that identity alive, and that's what cultures do. Traditions do. I'm not talking about all of them. Exceptions are always there, but majority of them, they limit you, they put you inside a box, and they take away your freedom, the freedom to be yourself. So love is flying. It's not being in the cage. Attachment is putting yourself in a cage. You think that it's the outside, but it's your own ego that is creating that attachment. So ask yourself, who am I? And know yourself beyond yourself. If you enjoyed the video, you can like, comment, and share with your friends. Thank you for subscribing. Much love to you all. Namaste.